welcome to Centre Court, all thanks to OMF, Australian designed and owned. I'm Bianca Chatfield, and of course joining me at the desk is Madi Browne. It's been a huge round 9 of games, hasn't it? I cannot believe it.
I don't know how everyone else's heart is dealing with it, but like 1 goal wins and losses every single week, it's a lot to take in, B.
It is, certainly is a lot. Let's have a look at the ladder, where it stands right now, just quickly, because I'm pretty sure you'll all agree the top 4 will stay in the top 4. Where they actually finish in that top 4, it is yet to be decided, but it is the clear front runners now, the Vixens, the Swifts, the Fever and the Thunderbirds. And I think we should chat way more about what has been happening. So it's time to get to the weekend that was, thanks to OMF. Upgrade your sleep game with a quality mattress from Australian designed and owned OMF. All right, Maddie, as we like to do, we like to digest everything that has happened. And I think the first game we need to go to is the Thunderbirds and the Firebirds. The Thunderbirds came out with a big win in the end. However, a lot of injuries happened during that game, and especially to Tipper Dwan. That was a really hard one to watch.
It was. She obviously rolled that ankle and then came straight off the court, and then we saw even Gabby Simpson come off the court as well, unknown to the extent of those injuries, so stay tuned on socials for that. But it was the 9 goals in the last quarter that was really it for the Firebirds, 24-9. I mean, the Thunderbirds, we know how good they are at kind of limiting volume from teams. They're so good defensively, but it was a credit to the Firebirds. They stayed right in it for so long, but for me, that's really the difference between the top 4 and the bottom 4. We talk about it each week. It's the consistency, being able to put 60 minutes out there, staying in the contest, and then owning those critical moments. And when it needed to count, the Thunderbirds just shone through. Yeah,
and Shamira Sterling, again, unbelievable. It's just so great to be able to watch her. I'm so glad neither of us have to play against her.
Yeah. Feeding against her was not fun, I'll tell you that much.
Right, let's take a look also at the big upset that happened over in the West, the Swifts by 1. Now, I say a massive upset. You know, I thought Fever would have had this game. We know Glasgow and Jess Anstis were both out due to COVID-19 health and safety protocols. So, unfortunately, COVID's still wreaking havoc on the league. But were you surprised by the result?
Well, it's quite interesting. You know, Fever only with a couple of losses for the season, but all by a point. And I mean, you can go, gosh, you're in the contest, but you know, do you want to lose by more to know that it just wasn't your day and you were beaten by a better team? Or do you want to know that you were so close and maybe it was like your own game that you could improve on? For me, Helen Housby, 10 out of 14 super shots, and Sarah Clow, she was outstanding. And we've mentioned about her versatility going from goal defence to goalkeeper. And Briony Akle also spoke about how good she is as a player, just always wanting more, always needing a little bit extra of a challenge. But she's in outstanding form, and those two down each end really driving it home. We rarely talk about the superstars in the middle. There's been a switch flicked at the Swifts. I don't know what it is, but they're on.
It's on.
Yeah, they're on, and they're in premiership form again.
Yeah, and shout out to Maddie Turner. Like, not that she was quiet during the game, but in that last quarter, she knew she had a role to play on Nat Butler, and she just tagged her and kept at it, and eventually broke her down right in the last minute of that game. So we're going to talk more about that a little bit later. The Lightning and the Vixens, it was another 1-goal victory. The Vixens, Kira Austin on the buzzer, super shot. She landed it. However, the Vixens, especially Simone McGuinness post-game, she was so disappointed.
She looked really angry, didn't she? Looked frustrated because they obviously blew it out to quite a lead, but they just let it go. And I think that's probably the difference between their season, previously when they've been so successful, is when they get that run, they know how to put the foot on the throttle and really push those leads out. It's good to have those close wins, but then after a while, you're like, how can we then punish when we really need to? So, yeah, shared experience is good, but yeah, the coach didn't look overly happy, but I think they'll take it because at one stage it didn't look good because Steph Wood once again came into her own. She just left it a little bit too late.
And then in Melbourne, it was the Magpies and the Giants. We were both at that game with Fox Netball. Giants, they were without Joe Harton. We thought that potentially Magpies could get the win, but they really blew them out, especially towards that second half.
They did. They came home like a steam train, and I think it was in the third quarter we were just like, can someone grab this game and roll with it? And sometimes I think coaches need to maybe inject some of that new energy, a new player. It might work, it might not, but you also need to know your players well enough to know what you need to do. the Giants obviously had the future of the Giants on, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was a young goal circle, but didn't they shine when they needed to? And when it had to count, they started putting those 2-point shots in, and it was just too much for the Magpies in the end. But yeah, they've got some big questions to answer, the Magpies.
I tell you what, it's that cool, casual approach from Jamie Lee Price. Watching her play in the middle, nothing phases her at all. She was just kind of, yeah, we'll go back and forth, we'll get what we need to do, rack up all these miss and net points.
And I think her game's really evolved over the season because she's taken on this leadership role for the very first time. She's been a vice captain, but there's been a few games she's had to lead from the top. And you've seen her really grow into that role and how she's been able to carry the team all on her own and still have an outstanding personal performance.
Well, that was the weekend that was, all thanks to OMF, Australian designed and owned. Now it's where I hand over the reins to Maddie. It's Maddies Minute time.
I get so stressed at this point because I'm like, okay, got to be quick and got to be succinct. But obviously on Sunday we celebrated Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to you, Bianca. We had a lot of mums obviously in commentary, but it's the ones on the court, and I think we can both agree that since we started playing and how the game's progressed in the last 10 years, there was no pregnancy clause. Now there is, and we're seeing nearly 10 players come back. Just a few names, there's lots of them out there, but 6 out of 8 teams actually have mums in them.
So cool.
We saw April Brownlee, obviously for the Giants, Ash Brazel, Nat Butler returning with 2 kids of her own, Janelle Fowler's always been there, Kim Rav, Carla Pretorius. There's even some training partners, some new faces on the scene as well. So my Maddies Minute goes out to them, and I think it's incredible how our game's evolved and how the game has changed. And after the game, we see kids running around. It looks like a daycare, but that's okay. It's all good. But yeah, credit to the mums out there. It can be a really good celebration day for some. It can be really hard, but it was just really nice to see some amazing performances from girls that have been able to go and start a family and then come back and pursue their sporting career again.
Yes, couldn't agree with you more. Spot on timing as well. Oh, look at you. What, 3 weeks in and you're nailing it. Oh,
it's all about the review. I'm reviewing each week.
Yes, good work. Of course, you're like Sarah Clow, wanting feedback, need 10 things to work on. Well, you nailed the timing, so don't worry about that anymore.
Done.
Okay, it's now time to get to take 5, and this is where it's my turn, Maddie, to throw some interesting scenarios and questions at you. You spoke briefly about the Magpies. If you're coaching the Magpies in the next few rounds, what do you do?
Well, to be honest, it's a real hard one because there are a lot of experienced players. We've even heard Ash Brazel say, like, I'm retiring. You know, she's not going to be there for the future. She's not going to be there next year. So your season's 2023 is done. Is it time to bring in some recruits, some training partners, really expose them to what SSN is about, see how they deal with the pressure? Or do you continue to work at what you're doing? I'd love to see them maybe go to an external advisor. We've seen lots of other codes get an external person in, and that's not just aiming it at this year's team. I was there in 2017, and we're still holding on to this Collingwood hoodoo of what is it that is really holding this team back. So getting someone in, figuring it out, giving a bit more of the blueprint. But to me, it's some of the little cracks that you can see from an outsider on the court. You see some looks, some sideways, a little bit of lack of respect towards coach and staff and players. So they really need to tighten it in, address it, and go, well, you know, what do we actually want to get out of these next 5 games, rather than just throwing in the towel and being halfway out the door before the season's even done.
Oh, and you know, I think everyone wants to see is all the players out there just playing with the freedom that we know and the beautiful skills that we've seen them play with, and just being able to go and enjoy the rest of the season and get some more wins on the board, because that certainly does bring confidence into the camp. My next one for you. The Swifts' final couple of minutes, how they really craft the way that they play the game. They know how to keep possession and slow teams down. They know how to score a super shot to make it really count and then starve the other team of the ball. Briony Akle, incredible what she's been able to do with this side, but over years, not just now. If you're in their camp, I want to know, how do you train something like that? How do you train that skill to be able to work the clock?
Well, you can tell that they know exactly the game plan that they need to execute in those moments. And, you know, as players, sometimes training is just made up of one drill. And it's not about the physical challenge, it's about the mental challenge and staying focused and having that trust within your playing group to know that everyone's going to stay on task, everyone's going to be disciplined. You might have to push a bit of ego and your own personal gains and game plan to the side. required for the team's success. Whether it's doing 5 centre passes in a row and making that, where the defenders, you still go hard, we want to execute and want to be able to deliver those things. But this season we've seen more of freezing of the ball.
Yeah.
So teams are really
all teams do it sometimes.
Yeah, especially when the game is close and it's like that piggy in the middle, trying to hold that ball and that possession. But Briony is brilliant, and you can tell that relationship she has with her players really shines through when it needs to.
Yes, and it's some of that, the most boring training sessions, isn't it, where it's one drill and you could be doing it for 45 minutes, but that's the important stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Fever, we know that they have had 3 losses by 1 goal. We thought at the start of the season they were unbeatable. Are they still considered the elite of the competition?
Yeah, I still think they're definitely up there. I'd love for them to kind of take some deep breaths in a way and just release some of the stress and pressure I think they're putting on themselves. Of course, we all want to be up there and continue to excel and play, but just being comfortable with winning ugly. We've seen Vixens go, all right, however we get the job done, let's just get it done. And I think Fever just are striving for that perfection more often than not, which all teams are, but just release some of that stress and play. And as you said, when teams are having fun, when players are having fun, they're enjoying their netball, that's when they play their best. So, yes, I still think they're up there, but let go of last year. Don't worry that you're the reigning premiers, because when they are on, they are literally unstoppable. So they are still elite, but just let go of some of the stress. And a lot of the games these days, it's not really the physical, it's between the ears.
Yep.
That's where the game is won.
They're just lulling us all into a false sense of
I
security,
reckon.
I think, and then they're going to come home so strong. Okay, my next one for you is player selection for the World Cup coming up. What happens with the player selection, and how hard is it knowing there's so many different positions up for grabs, and also players not playing in those positions?
Well, I mean, We've heard Stacey Mirinkovic talk about that she still connects with all of the Diamond squad members, and each week is giving them maybe some personal feedback, which could be conflicting to their club coaches as well, but I'm sure they're working as a collective. But it can be hard, so that communication, that open dialogue, that transparency is really important for players. The question is, there are a lot of players that maybe are not in form. Yes, they're playing out of position, but how do you go into a tournament when players need that confidence and belief in their own ability, but knowing when they come into the best 12 or 15 in the country that they can still execute and perform? So it's a tough one, but I think it all comes down to open communication and dialogue, and we've heard the Diamonds are doing that. But yeah, the focus still has to be your club first and foremost, because we always know when your club's doing well, selections take care of themselves.
They definitely do. All right, final one. Who are our 2 teams who are going to be in the grand final?
Well, at this point in time,
or round 10.
Yeah, heading into round 10, I would say that the Vixens and the Thunderbirds are going to be there. I know I'm pretty much going against everything I just said about Fever, but I feel like I've watched those teams the last couple of weeks, and it's that real defensive versus that real shooting power of the Vixens to the Adelaide defenders. So, yeah, I reckon that'd be a really, thirsty contest.
Well, we'd love to know your thoughts as well on our socials. All right, let's get to the socials and what's been happening, because we put it out to you after Maddies Minute. We spoke about what happened in the Fever Vixens game with that 2-point shot that could have been a 1-point. Was a 2-point in the end. Thank you so much for everybody who gave us your feedback and your thoughts around that. Maddie, what did you make of the outcome in the end?
Look, I mean, the umpires, we've got to put our hands up to them. Like, they are exceptional at what they do. They know the rule book inside and out. There's obviously a rule in there saying, whether it's a free pass, this is exactly what happens. A lot of the talk was also about did Courtney do it on purpose because she knew that they only needed a 1 to level it? So there's those types of, mind games that come into play as well. So I think the umpire made the right decision at the right point in time. But yeah, it should not disadvantage the team with possession. So maybe that just needs to be clarified so everyone is understanding, because we don't want these cheeky defenders to just.
And really, you've got to try everything you possibly can.
Yeah, of course.
So, I mean, it's not our problem if the umpire calls something different, you just got to let it and give it a go and see what happens. And also, it was great to hear Michelle Fippard on Centre Circle on Fox Netball as well talk about the Captain's Challenge and whether there's room to put in something like that. We spoke about, what did you make of what she said?
Look, I think she was like, look, there's a lot happening in the game that we need to get right. I still believe it would be awesome, whether we say it's a captain's challenge, a coach's challenge, or even a technical challenge.
Yes.
And is it 1.5, or is it just one a game? But I think there needs to be, and she did make this clear, there needs to be specified rules that you could challenge on rather than having it open slather, because are we getting a little bit tic-tacking on the little things like just let the game flow go? But yeah, no, I think in the future, or May 2024 when the rules are being discussed, I think it'll definitely be on the table. You heard it here first.
And even Jiva was getting around it on the socials saying, yes, let's bring it in. So I hope something like that comes into the game. Okay, so don't forget, make sure you keep in touch with us on the socials. Tell us who you think will be the grand finalists. Now we're going from round 10, all right? Grand finalists from round 10, we understand that could possibly change and probably will change many times before the end of the season. Let's take a look at the fixture and what is going to be happening in round 10. Mads, I think you have to agree, match of the round for me will be the Vixens and the Thunderbirds.
Absolutely, and you know, we've talked about that 4 being quite solid in where it is, but it's your standing and where you finish in that 4, yes. Whether it gets you a home final, whether it gives you a second chance. So there's a few dead rubber games, unfortunately, now playing out with teams, but there's pride. There's contracts for next year, but for those top 4s, that Vixens and Thunderbirds match, as I said, it's that shootout versus the defensive pressure. Yeah, I can't wait to go watch it.
And if you are playing one of those teams in the bottom 4, it really, sometimes you can get lulled into this false sense of security that, oh, you know, we don't have to like completely turn on the jets, but I think we're going to really watch teams dominate because they have to, and they have to keep working on some of their processes as well.
And some of those bottom teams, this is when you can actually affect the finals.
Shake it up.
You can shake it up, and as I said, that pride is on the line. You want to continue to get those wins. So yeah, fight for it right to the very, very end.
Well, that's Centre Court for another week, all thanks to OMF, Australian designed and owned. We look forward to chatting to you again next week.